Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles football fans? Welcome into the LA Football Show. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Beautiful Friday. Happy Friday to you. The weekend is upon us. Thanks for tuning in. We are on the LA Football Network, our city, our network. You can catch us Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays right on LAFBnetwork.com, anywhere you get your podcasts, and on YouTube at LAFB Network. And every Friday, as it is today, live on the mighty airwaves of the mightier 1090 ESPN radio. Thanks again, like I said, for tuning in. Appreciate you as always. We are less than 1 week away from the NFL draft in Las Vegas, Nevada. The LAFB Network will be in person in Vegas. There's going to be about 5 of us out there. We're setting up like a draft house, bringing you tons of draft content, interviews on the strip. Obviously, we'll do some live shows during the draft, I should say, with, analysis, plus us just having fun, drinking some beers, having a good time. But it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Can't wait for it. It's supposed to be in Vegas, I think in 2020, right? And canceled due to COVID, went virtual that year. Then they went to Cleveland last year, and now Vegas is actually getting their draft as they were supposed to get 2 years ago. And I believe, so back then, it was supposed to be, the draft was literally like the stage was going to be in the Bellagio fountain, and draft picks or selections were going to be like boated out into the fountain after they were selected. I don't know if it's going to be like a rowboat situation, a canoe, like a little motorized platform. I think that's still the plan, because from what I've heard, they're shutting down the strip from, driving traffic. It's just going to be all fan traffic cruising around. The fan experience is going to be right there, like across the street at that like link area. Because the draft is at like Bellagio, Caesars, that whole area. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be crazy to see what it's like. So we'll get in Thursday. So we'll make sure to be posting, pictures, videos. We're going to get fan interviews. So make sure to tune in to LAFB Network on all the socials, YouTube, and on the website, because we'll have everything up on LAFBnetwork.com. So I'm super excited to kind of see what this experience is like. I've never actually gone in person to a draft. So this will be the first one. Not only will I be in person, but, we'll be covering it credentialed. It's going to be great. So we'll see how the Chargers and the Rams do. Obviously, Rams don't have a pick till the 3rd round. But there's, still have 8 selections. So still a busy weekend for them. And not to mention their draft house is in, the Hollywood Hills. Last year they were in Malibu. This year they're in Hollywood Hills. If you haven't seen that, check that out, where they're drafting from, being McVay and Snead and company. Yeah, we'll be tuning all into that, covering all that. So make sure just to stick with it. But hope you're all doing well. Got a good show for you today. Just to kind of go down the rundown. USC and UCLA both have their spring games tomorrow. So we've been covering them all spring practices. I've been at USC. Our own Jamal Madney's been covering UCLA. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what to expect. 2022 draft props brought to you by our friends at Pickup. So we have, created some fun draft props that you can play for free and win prizes. So I'm going to go through some of those that you can play right along with all of us at LA Football Network. And then we're going to look back at the last 5 draft classes of the Rams and Chargers. So that's dating back to 2017. So I want to go through each of those, kind of see who's panned out the best, who's flopped, and then try to give an overall grade of, over those 5 years, which team is drafted better. Now, just on the surface, seeing as the Rams have been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1, the Chargers none, probably would go with the Rams. But hey, let's actually get into those selections, because a lot goes into going to a Super Bowl, right? It's obviously drafting and producing, but also free agency, veteran signings, trades, stuff like that. So let's get all into that. Before we dive right in, obviously got to mention our betting partner of the LA Football Network. It's Bet Online. Still one of the leaders in betting information. And if you go to betonline.ag today, use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. You get a 50% welcome bonus. So whatever you put in, 50% of that is just added to your deposit. It's free money. Can't go wrong with that. You can bet on draft props. Like I said, we'll have some free ones you can play, but if you want to pay some money, you can bet on draft props there. MLB season is finally off and running. NBA playoffs is going. NHL playoffs are getting started here very shortly. So plenty of sports to play on. Plus, you can just do futures. Put some money on the Chargers win the Super Bowl, the Rams win the Super Bowl. Never know. BetOnline.ag, promo code BLEAV to get your welcome bonus. All right, so let's start with USC and UCLA today because we haven't talked a ton about them. It's after the big recruiting news. It's like not a ton happens, but they've had, a couple weeks of spring practices. I've been at some USC practices, so I'll talk primarily about them since that's what I've witnessed. I've been in the Coliseum for one of their practices, been on campus, so seeing Lincoln Riley in interviews and whatnot. But I do have to say, UCLA fans out there, Jamal has been at some practices. He will be at the spring game tomorrow. I believe there is like early spring game, or they call it the spring showcase. I believe it's at like 8:30 in the morning, but he'll be there. So make sure to tune in to Jamal Madney. He's at LAFB Jams with a Z on Twitter, but we'll have everything that he reports on, up on the site. Maybe we'll do a quick show tomorrow too, just kind of recapping. But a lot of big things to watch for UCLA because, you get DTR returning, you get Zach Charbonnet returning. I mean, those are your two huge names coming back that, Zach Charbonnet, I think, is going to be the best running back in college football next year. I have zero doubts about that. I thought he was honestly a top 5 back this year, but he wasn't used as much. So statistically, I don't think he was in remotely the same category as, the top backs that we're seeing going to the draft or even returning. He didn't get mentioned as much just because, there was a stretch there, the Hawaii game, the LSU game, the Fresno State game, where I think in 3 of those games combined, he had like 30 carries. He was averaging like 10 carries a game, still putting up over 100 yards and multiple touchdowns a game, but just didn't imagine if he had 20 carries. And then by the end of the season, they started using him a little bit more. And so he still finished with, great stats with incredible production, like over 6 yards a carry. But this year as a featured back, which, I guess he was kind of featured, but just they had a 2-headed monster with him and Britton Brown. But him as the featured back, he's going to just be a monster. I think he'll far and away be the best back in the nation. He'll win awards. He'll be the first back taken to the draft. No question. That's just how talented he is, how good he is. And, we were talking, or I wasn't, but we had Sean Ryan on one of our shows, the left tackle for UCLA who's going into the draft this year. He was on our Bruin Bible and Draft is in Session show and kind of didn't straight up ask, but kind of alluded to surprising that Charbonnet went back after he could have still been like a top 5 running back taken this year. Like, no doubt. No doubt he was getting drafted. It was just kind of where, and running backs these days, it's rare to go in the first round anyway. And, Sean said it was very important to him to get his degree. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. Some of these, we're always looking at, how you make the most money, how you get to the league the fastest, take care of yourself, which I get, as most of these players, that's what they're striving for. But there is still that select few that really value that education they're getting. And UCLA, one of the top schools in the nation in terms of education. And we, time and time again that we've talked to these UCLA kids, one of the big reasons why they chose UCLA was for UCLA, the school, not just the football program and Chip Kelly and what they could do with their football career, but what they would do after football and how valuable that education at UCLA is. And I think it's telling that Zach Charbonnet basically said, no, I'm going to take another year away from my NFL career to go back to UCLA to further my education, to set myself up for after football. I think that's pretty incredible. So, yeah, I just think that's a fascinating development that doesn't get talked about a lot. It's like we look at these kids as, just playing for the paycheck. And, a lot of them, and there's nothing wrong with that by any means. You go to college to get a career, right? And these kids are going to college to play football to hopefully get to the NFL and make the most out of that short time a lot of them have to be able to play the game they love, and you can get paid very handsomely. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Definitely not saying that, but I think it's pretty cool when you see some of these players are like, I value life after football too. and I'm going to get a UCLA degree, which is, arguably top 10 in the country. You put it up there with Ivy League educations. And so that's why Zach Charbonnet went back to school. A lot of people questioned why he's going back, and that's why, according to Sean Ryan, his teammate, left tackle, who we'll maybe talk about here in a minute. But then you also look at DTR. So these are kind of spring showcases. Spring games aren't going to give you a whole lot. I mean, it's more of just a kind of a fun, it's a good atmosphere. Get the players back out there. Maybe show some fans kind of what you've been working on. But I mean, you're not showing your playbook. You're not showing, what to expect for the fall. You're not showing your hand. But DTR, another player, come back for his 5th year. He'll be a 5th-year starter. And I think for DTR, there was the education aspect as well. I think he's a very smart dude, also planning for his future out of football. Also knowing, being smart. I obviously probably talked to his potential agents or just kind of got a feeler out there for what his draft value was. And I'm sure realized like he was going to be a fringe draft pick, like either taken very, very late or not taken and would have to play that undrafted free agent role. So probably would have absolutely had an opportunity in a training camp. But, there was no guaranteed real money in there and whatnot. So he probably said, you know what, I'm going to go back to UCLA, A, finish my education, but B, give myself another year to showcase, because I think he's really starting to play out the talent that we all knew he was when he came in as a freshman. I mean, last year, far and away, was his best year. And if he can just build on that, like he could go from a fringe drafted player this year to a mid-round pick next year, or even higher if he absolutely balls out. I mean, it's not out of the realm. I mean, Joe Burrow, again, I'm not comparing to DTR to Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow before his 5th season, maybe a mid-round pick, maybe he had 1 year starting at LSU after transferring from Ohio State. Probably saw some, intangibles there, some arm talent would get taken, and then the unquestioned number 1 overall pick from his 1 year. So there's no, I mean, who knows? DTR balls out. He could go from a fringe draft pick to a high tier mid round or even into that like 2nd round talk. I mean, who knows what he can do? So I think he came back twofold: 1 for education, but 2, just realizing there didn't have a ton of value in this year's draft, even with it being a bad quarterback class. But if he can go out and lead UCLA to some big wins, lead UCLA to, Pac-12 title, that could help his draft stock. And then thirdly, and that's the last thing, I think he values what he wants to leave his legacy at UCLA, not just the individual records, but if UCLA, having their best season last year with 8 wins, well, if they can push that to 9 or 10 and compete for a Pac-12 title, I mean, he'll go down as one of the best UCLA quarterbacks ever. I mean, he's got to think about that too. I mean, what if they play for a Rose Bowl next year? DTR is up there with, Cade McNown and Troy Aikman. Josh Rosen didn't do that. So, I mean, he could be one of the best UCLA quarterbacks of all time if he does, really, really good things this year. So I think it was kind of after he decided, it was a no-brainer. Get your education, raise your draft stock, and continue to build your UCLA prowess and, help your teammates and your team go further. So, and many people are probably debate that because obviously Dylan Gabriel transferred here, and then because DTR coming back transferred out, and many people maybe wanted Dylan Gabriel more than DTR, but I think DTR was just kind of scratching the surface last year, and I think we'll truly see how good he can be this season. I mean, this is the tell-all, right? Like this is the deciding factor if he is that highly touted recruit out of Bishop Gorman that he was now 5 years ago. So those will be some fun things to kind of talk about at the spring game tomorrow to kind of see just how the vibe's going, because you're having a lot of new position players. A lot of guys on defense are going to be new, whole new receiving room, tight end, a lot of new offensive linemen. I mean, both your tight ends are gone. So you got some good players coming back, but you have a whole new cast of characters also. So a lot of interesting things there for UCLA. For USC, I mean, also, it's going to look completely different for USC. I mean, literally night and day different at almost every position. And obviously the coach is different too. So, like I said, I've been at a few practices, and you can just feel the difference. You can feel the culture change, which is, I think, the most important thing. And it's hard to explain or put into words like what a culture shift is or how you can really define it. But I mean, you can just feel it. If you were at games and practices last year, as I was, and now being obviously not games yet, but being at practices, just the urgency, the attention to detail, the excitement, if you will. And some of that just comes with something new, right? Like you just start something new. Doesn't mean you're necessarily doing it right, but it's just the new, shiny. You're like, okay, everyone's fired up, revved up. But I think you can certainly, I mean, Lincoln Riley has a pretty good track record of success. So I think, they're doing it right. But, and you just see the excitement around this team and the, like I said, attention to detail, the urgency in practice, the no wasted reps, no wasted time from what we can see. I mean, we're not able to watch the entire practice. They basically let us watch individual drills and then we have to leave and then we come back to like interview coaches and players afterwards. So not seeing like their walkthrough and stuff, but you can just feel it, even in individuals. And, on Tuesday, it was, got to interview Caleb Williams for the first time, new quarterback. And man, any Trojans fans out there needs to be fired up about this kid. Obviously, the talent's off the charts. How highly recruited he was. You see the size. You see the physicality. Obviously, that's all there, which is what you need in a quarterback. Mentally, it's there. Super smart, cerebral player. But then just the acumen, if you will, or the ability to kind of speak with the media. I don't know if that's necessarily a super important thing, but it is impressive as a young man, 19 or 20 years old. I mean, his interview, you could just feel like, okay, this kid is special when it comes to just the whole package. Like he is a USC quarterback when you think of the USC greats. And if he can stay the course and not get distracted, stay healthy, he could end up being one of the best USC quarterbacks to go to the pros. Because we've seen a lot of USC quarterbacks be great at USC, but then we haven't really seen too many of them transition well to the NFL. This kid has it all and can absolutely do it. And I know it's silly to say, just from talking to the media for 7 minutes, you could kind of feel that, but there's something about it where you're just like, this is special. Like we talked to Miller Moss right before, and this is nothing against Miller Moss, who I think is a special player too, and would start at a lot of other colleges. But he's just kind of, he sounds more like a kid, like a younger kid, the way he answers questions, a little nervous there, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. But Caleb Williams just like commands the room. Just commands the room. Dude is going to be special. So spring game, I mean, really all we're looking, again, someone asked Lincoln Riley straight up, like, oh, how much are you plan on showing? Obviously, you're not going to show your whole playbook. And, it's going to be a very, very simple, just kind of stuff to show the fans. It will be nationally broadcasted on ESPN. Kirk Herbert in the building on the call, I think, which is super cool. It's the only nationally televised spring game in the country this year at the Coliseum. So I'm excited. I'll be there tomorrow. So make sure to tune in for any coverage I provide at Ryan Dyberd. LAFB is where you can find a lot of stuff there. But it'll just be fun to see them all out there. See them out there, run some plays, see Caleb Williams sling the rock a little bit. Get some of his receivers involved. The guy I'm looking forward to this year, outside of the obvious, big name transfers that came in, but I really want to see Kyle Ford kind of live up to his recruitment height. And this dude, when you see this dude in person, he is a specimen. Big body receiver. Kyle Ford, number 81. Look for him in the spring game because I really want to see him make that jump. And this system could absolutely utilize him. And no one's really talking about him because of the transfers that came in and they were recruited by Lincoln Riley, rightfully so. But Ford was that highly touted recruit, 3-4 years ago, that has kind of stuck with it, just never really got the shine, obviously playing with the great receivers that were there before him and Drake London last year. But here's a guy that, he has all the physical tools. If he can put it all together, stay healthy, and really, really integrate himself in this system with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. I mean, this is a kid that I think could be a breakout player this year that no one's talking about. So look out for Kyle Ford in this one. So going to be a lot of fun at these spring games. I'm just excited to watch a little live football action and, be able to kind of talk about it. And like I said, maybe me and Jamal will jump on a show, do a little UCLA, USC kind of breakdown of what went down for both of these spring games, because after this, then it's basically nothing until fall camp starts. So this is kind of, you put a bow on the spring program, and then there's really nothing that happens with USC and UCLA football, like I said, till Maybe get some transfers in there still, some news like that. But other than that, I mean, there's no practices, no football till we get to fall for these two programs. So this is kind of the last thing we get to really watch and hopefully enjoy and see some good things and some fun. So we're looking forward to it. Hope you guys enjoy. Like I said, tune in. At LAFB Jams is Jamal. He'll be at UCLA. At Ryan Dyrud, LAFB is me. I'll be at the Coliseum. And yeah, should be a lot of fun. Tune in on ESPN. Kickoff is at noon for the USC game. All right, but we're going to take a quick break here. Be back at the bottom of the hour to talk some draft props and to look back at USC's and UCLA's at the Chargers and the Rams' last 5 draft classes and kind of compare which team did better. So stay tuned. Talk to the bottom of the hour. What's up, LA football fans? Welcome back to the LA Football Show. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Thanks for sticking around with me. We got a great segment here for the last half of the show. Before we get into that, though, got to talk about our new sponsor and my friends at Athletic Greens. A ton of people take multivitamins, but it's important to choose one that is top quality. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, superfoods, and probiotics to start your day right. Their special blend of ingredients supports gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's also lifestyle friendly and fits a wide range of diets. There's only 1 gram of sugar and no chemicals or artificial anything. Reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/believe. That's BLEAV. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/believe. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended or diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Athletic Greens, take ownership of your health. All right, so we hit on a bunch of USC and UCLA notes. Excited for that spring game tomorrow. But yeah, let's get into some draft props, shall we? So the LAFB has partnered with Pickup. It's a content company that provides engagement for fans and free prop bets to play that don't cost you anything. And so, we were looking at things we can do here to kind of hopefully get you engaged and, play along with us. And so I've created some props here that we can play that, will be decided this next weekend for the draft. To get to these props, all you got to do, if you're watching on YouTube or on LAFBnetwork.com, you can see there's a QR code in this stream. It's on the right and left side. I put it in both spots. So just scan that QR code. It'll take you right to the article. If you're on radio, just head to LAFBnetwork.com and the featured article there will be our prop bet selector right there. Also on, YouTube and any podcast platform, it's in the description. So you can just go to that link in the description and play along. Like I said, super easy to play. Verify with your phone number and you're entered to win. Or not, you'll get points if you're right, which then add up and you can use them in the store to get free stuff. Fanatics gift cards are available, cross nets, LAFB swag, so a bunch of stuff. So some fun props that I want to touch on quickly before we get into the last 5 draft classes for the Rams and Chargers. UCLA versus USC, more players drafted this year. It's an interesting classes because there's not that like premier player from either school. Well, okay, no, forgive me. Drake London is a premier player. But after Drake London, then you have Drake Jackson of USC, who I think can go anywhere from the 2nd round to like the 4th round. You have Isaiah Mao-Paulo, who, that safety prospect who I think will get drafted, isn't really getting talked about, but is a real lengthy player that can absolutely be used in a system, especially for special teams to start. You have Keontae Ingram, the running back, who not a lot of tread on the tires. So definitely a highly touted running back that has a lot of talent that I think that has a lot to prove. And he can go anywhere from like that 3rd, 4th to 7th range. And then you look at UCLA, who doesn't necessarily have the true blue chip. The closest is probably Greg Dulcich at tight end, who I think is the number one tight end in this draft class. Just depends how high you want to take a tight end. Like, he's not in that. I mean, I think he's as good, but he's not in this draft cycle in that, like, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant range where they went 8 and 20 respectively. I'm thinking Dulcich could maybe sneak into the first round if someone really wants a tight end. I think he'll for sure go in the second round. And then you have, tackle Sean Ryan, who I think can be in that second and third round range. So obviously many other players after that. Quentin Lake. I don't want to just name everyone. Kyle Phillips is my dog, who somehow is a 4th to 5th round grade. I think he's going to make a team very, very happy. But over under, what do you guys think? Who sees more players get drafted, not signed after the draft, but just straight up drafted? Off the top of my head, I think we might see more UCLA players. But I think with USC, I think you have Drake London, obviously, is a top 10 pick, probably top 20, like, is the biggest he'll fall. Drake Jackson is a probably second round pick at the edge position. And then Keontae Ingram is your running back, kind of differing range. I think those three are guaranteed to get drafted. I think you'll definitely see, all their DBs that are in the draft class will potentially get drafted. There's no guarantee, but I think there's absolutely potential to get more than those three. But I think those three are guaranteed. UCLA, I think, Ryan's guaranteed. Greg Dulcich is guaranteed. Quentin Lake's guaranteed. So you're kind of at 3 there at 2. And after that, it's kind of a toss-up. So it's a good good debate. So make sure to vote on that prop. What do you guys think? I'm going to just say I think UCLA will have more players drafted, which will be interesting. Next prop. Will the Chargers, and these are 2 separate props, I'll just combine them. Will the Chargers and Rams, so it's 4 props, all separate, that you can play, but will the Chargers or Rams draft a Bruin or Trojan? Love keeping talent here in Los Angeles. So what are the odds that any of these guys get drafted to the Rams or Chargers? Chargers, I think, are the most interesting because what they do at 17 will really have a big, this sounds like a dumb statement, but let me try to break it down. But what they do at 17 will really decipher what they do in their next pick in the third round. Because if they take a tackle at 17, then really the only chance they draft a Trojan or Bruin is probably one of the DBs, like an Isaiah or Quentin Lake, in those later rounds. Maybe a Keontae Ingram at running back. I think he'd be a good fit with Austin Eckler. But if they don't go tackle and say they go, I don't know, a DB or receiver at 17, or shock everyone and go linebacker, well, then that third round pick, if Greg Dulcich somehow slides to the third round, or Sean Ryan tackle is in the third round, then I think there's a very high probability they could go there. Even Drake Jackson, they need more depth at edge. You have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, obviously. But after that, you have Chris Rumph, and that's kind of it. So that wouldn't even shock me either if a guy like Drake Jackson they see as a good fit there in the third round. So a lot more possibility with the Chargers taking a Bruin or Trojan if they don't go tackle at 17. So, yeah. And then with the Rams, I think you're looking at, I don't know if they'll go a running back, but maybe a Keontae Ingram late if they want to add another running back to the stable. But I think it's a definite possibility to get one of the DBs or safeties. I think that's a definite possibility. Like, I would love Quentin Lake on the Rams. It'd be a ton of fun. And that'll be, in that 6th round, 7th round kind of sweet spot. But, so yeah, I think there's a good chance that either of those teams, but a lot's going to, be decided. And the final 2 props, which kind of go along with the first one, just how many USC players will be picked and how many UCLA players picked. So I think each team had 5 or 6 at the combine. So I think the over-under set at 4.5. And that'll kind of play into that first one you decided, right? Like who has more players drafted. So some fun there. Let's get involved. Like I said, scan the QR code if you want to play those. If you're watching on any of our video streaming platforms, link is in the description anywhere you're listening. And if you're on radio, just head to LAFBnetwork.com and you'll find it as the featured post there. All right, let's wrap the show up by looking back at the Rams and Chargers' last 5 draft classes and kind of comparing how they did, right? So let's start here with the Rams. So we're going back to 2017. I'm not going to just name every single person, but I'll just name some of the top ones. So they took Gerald Everett. Again, no first-round picks for the Rams in any of these. So their first-round pick was, I think, the year before that, 2016, was Jared Goff. So the second round, they took Gerald Everett. Third round, to Cooper Kupp. The other third-round pick, John Johnson. And they took Josh Reynolds in the fourth. Samson Ekebom, or Ebukam, also in the fourth, and I won't list off everyone after that. Solid draft class, I would say. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is the big name there, who is the best receiver in football. I've said that many times. I absolutely still believe that. Him alone makes this draft class pretty damn good. Josh Johnson obviously was a phenomenal pick as well. Now I know he's with Cleveland. They kind of got priced out on him. But, how many people remember Josh Johnson as a third-round pick? Fantastic player. Josh Reynolds in the fourth round, gave them good value for what he was needed as like a third and fourth receiver. And Gerald Everett was probably the biggest disappointment. Not that he was bad by any means, but with how athletic he was, you would hope he was going to be able to be utilized more in the offense. And I'm really excited and really interested to see actually how he is in this Chargers offense. Because remember now, he's signed with the Chargers in free agency. And, no Jared Cook again in Los Angeles for the Chargers. So Everett will kind of be the guy, him and Donald Parham and Trey McKitty. And unless they draft someone like a Greg Dulcich. So I'm excited to see how Everett does in that Joe Lombardi system with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, because we saw him with the Rams, Stafford wasn't there yet. So Jared Goff was his quarterback when he was at the Rams. And when he went to Seattle, Russell Wilson was hurt a lot last year. So he didn't even get to play a full season with Russell Wilson. So we'll see how he does, with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. So now you look at the Chargers 2017 draft class. You have Mike Williams was their first round pick at 7. Forrest Lamp in the second. Dan Feeney in the third. Rayshawn Jenkins in the fourth. Desmond King in the fifth. Sam Tevy in the sixth. And Isaac Rochelle in the seventh. So the only player still on the team is Mike Williams. So I think you can safely say in this year, at the time, many people probably questioned the Rams draft, but the Rams draft, I think, would unquestionably be much, much better than this Chargers draft class. Mike Williams obviously has made a nice career for himself. I think the ceiling is just going to keep going up and up. Sign an extension with the Chargers, which I was very happy about. But I think no one would argue that Mike Williams is better than Cooper Kupp. And Mike Williams was drafted 7th overall, Cooper Kupp in the 3rd. And again, Rams only have Cooper Kupp left in this draft class, but they got really good production out of John Johnson, Josh Reynolds, even to an extent Gerald Everett. Now they're gone, but they at least were able to utilize them well when they were there. Whereas with the Chargers, Lamp could never really stay healthy. Feeney started a lot of games for the Chargers, but I wouldn't say very successfully on the offensive line. Rayshawn Jenkins had some good moments. Desmond King did have an all-pro season as a special teamer, but kind of ended, I guess not great. Sam Tevy played some games, was never really a great offensive lineman. And Isaac Rochelle, was kind of a good rotational player. So, they got some good value, I guess. They got some good value of this. But I think you look at what Cooper Kupp and just Josh Johnson alone were able to do for the Rams, and you'd probably take that higher. So, all right, let's move into the 2018 Chargers draft class. We'll go kind of snake it. And now this is a solid draft class for the Chargers overall. Again, not many left with the team, which is always fun when you look at drafts, but definitely good production that they got out of all the players when they were there. Derwin James falling to 17 has to be the steal of the decade for this team. Uchenna Nwosu, who they got in the 2nd round, now with the Seahawks, but, did some good things with the Chargers while here. Justin Jones in the 3rd round. Again, when healthy, a very dynamic player. Really wish he would have been back this year, but they just went a different direction. Kaiser White, who this year had his breakout season, now signed with the Eagles. Scott Quessenberry was just a very, very solid backup center/guard. Dylan Cantrell in the 6th, and Justin Jackson in the 7th, who Justin Jackson was a very fun running back. Unfortunately, just could not stay healthy. So look at this draft class. Obviously featured by Derwin James, but you got good production out of Nwosu, out of Jones, out of White this past season, and a great depth piece in Quessenberry and Jackson. So I think this overall, I know only one remains, but this was a solid draft class because you got quality playing time from almost every single player here except for Dylan Cantrell. That's pretty good swings in the draft and hitting. and obviously Derwin James, who arguably is the best safety in football. Now we look at the Rams 2018. Again, no first-round pick, no second-round pick. So let's just go down it. In the third round, Joseph Noteboom. Fourth round, Brian Allen. The fourth round, John Franklin Myers. Fifth round, Micah Kaiser. Fifth round, Obo Okoronkwo. Sixth round, John Kelly. Sixth round, Jamil Demby. Sixth round, Sebastian Joseph Day. Sixth round, Trevin Young. Sixth round, Traven Howard. That was the seventh round, Traven Howard. And seventh round, Justin Lawler. So you could look at this draft class in a number of different ways. You get Noteboom and Brian Allen late, who are now both your starting quality offensive linemen. Noteboom taking over as a starting left tackle to sign an extension. Brian Allen started at center last year and is your starting center for the foreseeable future with his extension. John Franklin Myers was kind of that odd, ended up letting him go, and now he's made a nice career for himself with the Jets, so is a good player. Micah Kaiser had a good starting year, and it's now, I think did he re-sign with the Broncos? I know he went over to the Broncos last year. He might be a free agent still. Obo, good rotational player. He's elsewhere now. Demby never really panned out. Sebastian Joseph Day, fantastic value at 6, also now with the Chargers. So another Rams draft pick that is with the Chargers now. And, Traven Howard signed his tender, so he'll be back with the Rams as kind of a rotational linebacker piece, right behind Ernest Jones and obviously Bobby Wagner. So another solid draft class. I think you give this one to the Chargers just for the fact that they get Derwin James, and that trumps kind of everything. But the Rams get some good quality players here and have 2 quality starters that they're able to get in the mid rounds. So I think that's pretty impressive, having no first and second round pick. And I mean, Sebastian Joseph Day was a starter also. So you basically get 3 starting players from the third round and beyond. Really just goes to show how impressive Snead and McVay are in these late round drafts. 2019. All right, so here's another interesting, I would say, fairly good draft class for the Rams. We'll start with, again, we'll snake it. So no first round pick, obviously. Second round was Taylor Rapp. Third round, Darrell Henderson. Third round, David Long. Third round, Bobby Evans. Fourth round, Greg Gaines. Fifth round, David Edwards. And 2 seventh-round picks, you get Nick Scott and Dakota Allen. So of this class, you still have Rapp, still have Henderson, still have Long, still have Evans, still have Gaines, still have Edwards, and still have Scott. So everyone but Dakota Allen is still on the roster, which I think makes this a very solid draft class. As Rapp as a rotational starting safety. Henderson, if the dude could just stay healthy, he's fun and dynamic to watch. Unfortunately, he just can't stay healthy. David Long played in the starting role last year, up and down season, but hey, starter on a Super Bowl winning team, can't take that away from him. Evans has been kind of a bummer. Showed some good stuff in relief 2 years ago, and then it hasn't been great since. See how he can be. Greg Gaines, fantastic last year after Sebastian Joseph Day got injured, which is why they let him walk, essentially, because Greg Gaines proved he could be an elite nose tackle in this league. David Edwards, drafted as a tackle, but has been a starting guard. Solid player. Wouldn't say extremely great Pro Bowler, but definitely a solid lineman. And Nick Scott, drafted as a special teamer and kind of took over as a starter as a safety in the playoffs. And we'll see if he gives it back. I mean, he may be, him and Jordan Fuller, maybe your 2 starting safeties now. He may have taken that job from Taylor Rapp. Nick Scott, love that pick. One of the first interviews on the LA Football Podcast. Chargers 2019. How are we doing on time here? Let's speed this up a little bit. Chargers, you took Tillery in the first, Adderley in the second, decent when healthy. Trey Pipkins in the third, Drew Tranquill in the fourth, good when healthy. Easton Stick in the fifth, Emeka Egbule in the sixth, and Cortez Broughton in the seventh. So I think you undoubtedly favor this one of the Rams. Of these players on the Chargers, still have Tillery, Adderley, Pipkins, Tranquill, and Stick still on this team. Drew Tranquill is probably Drew Tranquill is probably the best out of this lot. Again, if he can just stay healthy. Nasser Adderley has shown some really good things. Unfortunately, just hasn't really gotten to a rhythm, but still a good player. He's your starting safety. And Tillery's been kind of up and down and hasn't really blossomed. And now it seems like the writing's on the wall with how they've addressed the D tackle position in free agency. But, not a bad draft class, but I think you definitely tip the scales to the Rams in this one. All right, 2020. This is your Justin Herbert draft class. You get Justin Herbert in the sixth, trade back in the first for Kenneth Murray, Joshua Kelly in the fourth, Joe Reed in the fifth, Alohi Gilman in the sixth, KJ Hill in the seventh. Outside of Justin Herbert, definitely not a great draft class. Jury's still out on Kenneth Murray. I know fans have already given up on him, but still a young 23, oozing with talent. can still potentially be a very good backer in this league if he can kind of find his role and his footing on what he needs to be. But yeah, outside of Herbert, very underwhelming draft class there. Rams 2020 draft class, you get Cam Akers and Van Jefferson in the second, Terrell Lewis and Terrell Burgess in the third, Bryson Hopkins in the fourth, Jordan Fuller in the sixth, and Clay Johnston, Sam Sloman, and Tremaine Ankrum in the seventh. I don't know if underwhelming's the right word. They've had better classes, but they're still, I mean, these are young players, right? These are players going into their third season, so still can prove a lot. Cam Akers, obviously, we know how good he can be. Hopefully he can stay healthy, find that dynamic running ability that we saw 1 week in the playoffs and didn't really see the rest. So we need to get him in the rhythm. Van Jefferson, very, very solid wide receiver 3/4. Lewis is great, just can't stay healthy, unfortunately. Burgess, his utilization has been very odd to me. I think he's a super talented player. Maybe we'll see him a lot more in the nickel this year. Fuller, obviously, is the gem of this class, as taken in the 6th round and ended up becoming the starting safety alongside, Josh Johnson in his rookie season, and has really taken over and blossomed. Final one, 2021, last year's draft class. Tutu Atwell in the second, Ernest Jones in the third, Bobby Brown in the fourth, Robert Rochelle in the fourth, Jacob Harris in the fourth, Ernest Brown the fourth in the fifth, and you get Jake Funk, Ben Skowronek, and Chris Garrett all in the seventh. Ernest Jones is the gem, I think, in this class. A lot of unknown after that. Really don't know a lot of what these players can be after that because of injury, just because of not really needing them on the field. But Ernest Jones, great pick. And you look at the Chargers, 2021, you get Rashawn Slater, slam dunk. Asante Samuel Jr., slam dunk. Josh Palmer, rotational starter. Trey McKitty, great blocker. Chris Rumpf got a little hurt, but I think he's got good depth there. Brennan Hymus has a bright future. Nick Neiman, bright future, could end up being a rotational starter this year. Larry Roundtree, and Mark Webb, unfortunately, couldn't stay healthy. Definitely tipped the scales to the Chargers in this past draft class. Simply the fact that Slater and Samuel are stars already in this league. So, I mean, we had to rifle through that, but we're already running out of time here. So I think when you really kind of look at it and you look at those last 5 years, you would give the nod to the Rams as being the better drafters of those 5 years. But last year's class and obviously getting Herbert definitely help the Chargers at least stay in pace. So let's see how this happens in 2022. Can't wait to be there in Vegas. Can't wait to see what they're able to do and share it with all of you. Again, follow at LAFB Network, at Ryan Dyrud LAFB, as we'll be in Vegas all weekend long covering the draft. But obviously, I'll be back next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is the LAFB Football Show. Appreciate you all for tuning in. I'm Ryan Dyrud. Peace.